any friends
please.
friends or colleagues, or just go over anything I've said to clarify it. Gary asked me a question before, and that was about the invitation that we sent out with $130,000 of guaranteed income. If Nyok's there, can you please sign out of Adobe Acrobat, because somehow Adobe is stressing me out and thinks we've only got one user, but we have a couple. Yeah, it's not even letting me in. Can you exit Adobe? Nyok? Sorry, guys, just let me. Try again. Is that done? Sorry, guys. Just trying to get into Adobe. We've got all the details brochures. One sec. And that's where the presentation is as well.
Should probably stop recording.
Just one sec.
Recording and start over.
Technology is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
How do you know them?
They found me through, I thought it was my broker, but it's from something I signed up for about rates somewhere. They shared emails on database. That's why I was skeptical at this.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, guys.
Maybe you should stop recording for a minute.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully this is up and running now. Let's have a look. We'll just share the page.
I don't think he understood.
Okay. All right, so hopefully we can all see a brochure that says migration possibilities at the top right-hand side.
No.
No?
Oh, yes, now I can, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There it is, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Good. You had me worried there. Alrighty. So one of the NDIS providers that we deal with, who are the biggest providers of robust care in the country, are really desperate for accommodation. And they're desperate because robust are the people with the mental issues. And as an investor, you typically don't want a crazy person running through your house and kicking in walls and things like that. However, and so therefore none of these houses were getting built. And we went. One of my business partners went to them, did a deal with them, and that said that the government, you can only have one crazy person in a house, and maybe we shouldn't be recording crazy person either, but this is what the investors are scared of. So somebody with mental issues, which can come about from either, just a brain injury in a car, alcoholism, bad behavior. A lot of them are the autistic children these days. And that seems to be a growing area as well with bad behavior. So people, the investors didn't want those people in the house, because you can also usually only get one of those sort of people in a house, because otherwise, they fight with each other, for example. And therefore, you're only getting paid for one bedroom, one person, whereas if you built a house for people in a wheelchair, high physical support, you could get 2 or 3 of those people in a house that cost exactly the same to build, and therefore you get 2 or 3 times the income. So none of these robust houses were being built. and the providers were desperate for accommodation for these people because they can't be living at home. You can't leave them in a hospital all the time. They don't improve their situation or circumstances if they're in a mental institution in most cases either. So getting them out into their own house, their own space, really helps their recovery, and therefore leads to less money getting spent on them over time as well. So we did a deal, and the deal was that we not only get the rent, because the rent would be small in comparison to what else is available in NDIS, of maybe only $80,000, $90,000 a year. That's a small rent in NDIS for us. So we share all the income that the house generates. So every time there's a carer sitting in that house, which is 24 hours a day, we get a share of the income that is being produced by the NDIS provider, invoicing the NDIS at $89 an hour and paying the carer $35 an hour, or whatever it might be. As well as every time a behavioural psychologist comes out, every time we take them to the rugby, every time they have a holiday, they're getting paid. The NDIS is paying for those services for that person, and we get a share of that. So we get 40% of the net profit of that in these business cases. And even getting 40% of the income generated, which has been around $250,000 a year, still hasn't motivated enough people, or people being able to buy enough of these houses or build them fast enough. So and there's other bottlenecks with it as well. So there's only a certain amount of builders, there's only a certain amount of plumbers, there's only a certain amount of land that's suitable as well. Remembering we're not just building these things in Timbuktu and saying, there's a house, go and live in it. These people need to live with near their family, near their friends, and of course near medical services as well. So very tight list of criteria that we need to be able to finding something suitable, which makes it a very limited investment opportunity as well. And then if you add to that the fact that these people basically don't move out of a house, which is why this particular NDIS provider will give us a 40-year lease, then you understand why we need to be quick, get into these things, because once people are in the house, it's not a never-ending supply of people with a disability and funding. There's limited amounts of it, and then they don't move. So from an investor's point of view, you want to get in there soon, because they're not going to be moving anytime soon, unlike a normal tenant. So to get more people, and the other bottleneck that I was getting to was finding carers. So there's not a whole lot of people that want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and wipe somebody else's backside, but there's an enormous amount of people that want to migrate to Australia, and that are qualified to do so, especially from India. We have a lot of contacts and people waiting to come there. All right. And other countries as well, especially Philippines too, that can do really well by coming to Australia. Because every time we build a house, there's about 10 more new jobs that are created. If it's a high physical support house, there's virtually always going to be 2 people in that house. And if they need 24-hour care, which they typically do, that's 3 8-hour shifts every day. So that's 3 people working 7 days a week. Nobody works 7 days a week in Australia. So, that's a 3rd or 4th person that's also, it's a 7th or 8th person that's also required. Then, of course, you've got all the admin people. You've got the drivers that take them around. You've got the specialist carers as well. So there's at least 10 jobs. And that's also a limitation, because, we build 10 houses. The NDIS provider's got to go and find 100 people to service those houses. So we are looking to bring people in from overseas, and as part of the bundles, And that's why this says migration possibilities. I know it's getting along. It's a long story to get to the $130,000 a year, Harry. Sorry, but the Model 3, their investment, the NDIS provider is desperate for housing. Already, we've said it a couple of times, and basically this is proof. So they'll pay any investor $130,000 a year, whether there's somebody in that house or not, and even if the house is not even built yet. All right. So if an investor pays their deposit within at the end of 6 months, the rent starts getting paid. That's how desperate they are to get the houses built. And the house is not going to be ready in 6 months because it takes usually a month to get finance organised, 2 months to get through council, to get plans, permits done, 2 months, a month to get through councils, and it's about 5 months to build. So with this Model 3 option there, people will be getting an income even before the house is finished. But, you know, that's how keen they are to get more houses built. A few odd things with it as well is there's a list of highest demand areas, and basically when the investor invests 1.3 million for that particular property, it's the next property in the list where there's the highest demand. So it might be Tasmania today and it might be Darwin tomorrow, and we just get allocated as the next investor comes up with the property. So the good thing about NDIS is there's no better area than others if you've got a lease and if you've got one of the big NDIS providers behind you, because the rent's all about the same. We get the same lease, the people don't move out, and we're not concerned about capital growth at all because we're manufacturing our own capital growth based on the income that the houses are generating, like we explained before. We don't need to wait 7 years, 10 years for the property to double. It's nearly doubling in the first couple of years. Does that make sense? The person owns the property. There's no share of any business. It's just a straight $130,000 a year, $2,500 a week. So if anybody's retired, got a set amount of expenses and just wanted to make 100% sure that they could live and all those expenses were covered, then that's a very straightforward way to go about just ticking off retirement or children's school fees or, you know, ongoing expenses just in one go like that. Depending on what investors' financial circumstances are like, 10% loan, 20% loan. So if we think how much we would need to buy something like that, there's, God knows, 80,000, maybe more in stamp duty. Usually gets added to the loan, or you need the ability to redraw it from another property. 10% deposit. There's $10,000, $12,000 worth of finance fees. So the cheapest way to get into that's about 220, 230,000. If we put in a 20% deposit, some banks would want that. Depending on what people's finances are like, you know, we might be up for nearly $300,000 to invest in something like that and be getting the $130,000 a year return. So the returns are still really good. They're still twice as much as what would be in the share market, and they're a lot safer as well. And after a year or two, we could refinance that and go again. All right, so that's question number one answered. In that same model, if the investor invests in one of these packages, they're allowed to then nominate family, friends to work in the NDIS for the NDIS provider as a carer. So even if they were overseas, carer will still give them a job and train them in their registered training organisation here in Australia to get their Certificate 3 as a carer or Certificate 4 if they don't have it already. So it's a pathway to migration to Australia, which is wonderful for lots of Indian contacts. And we've got an office in India too, by the way, and there's a waiting list for people to see these agreements and to come to Australia to work for these things as well. And then, of course, you've got two other models there, which I'll just quickly run through. One is you're buying a franchise. So these are all the first two are franchise agreements. In Australia, there's an enormous amount of rules and regulations about franchise. So they have to prove the income that they're generating. So that's good for the rest of us that are investing, because we can see how much money these profit share properties are making from what they've done in the past. And we've got some of those facts and figures anyway. Though being as desperate as they are for accommodation, like I keep saying, you don't have to believe me, because there's $80,000 worth of fixed income there a year. They're guaranteeing you at least $80,000 a year if you spend $595. So even based on that, it's a really good return. However, on top of that, you're also getting a share of the business, and the business income was what we mentioned before, is a share of all the income that's generated. And that in the past has been around $250,000 a year, very roughly. I think the smallest one I saw it seems $230,000, and around Sydney metro area, it's well over the $300,000 mark for the income that these places generate. Some people would still want to own a bit of the property as well, and they can do that with owning 40% of the property for spending another $200,000. So it would, when you do the maths, it would definitely be worthwhile doing, budget permitting. And same story, you're getting an $80,000 guaranteed, plus you're also getting another $250,000 or so. So the returns on these investments in the NDIS business side of things are huge. It's nearly a 50% return. If you borrowed money for the franchise, then you're leveraging again. So you're doubling your money again, 60% returns or more, or way more. And these things would pay themselves off in a couple of years. So the biggest provider in the country for robust people is Cocoon. They need 600 houses by next year. I think they're up to about 250, 300 at the moment. So we've still got a lot of work to do, and we're being harassed a lot to go find more investors to help out with the waiting list of people at the moment. So that's the general overview. I'll send that out to people shortly. And then anybody that's interested would obviously want to see franchise agreements and other legal documents. So they'll come they'll come shortly as well, next few days. All righty. Gary, does that answer that question?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Thank you very much. I might have a talk to you afterwards about a few details, but yeah, that sounds pretty good. Thanks.
All right. We're always telling people to go and have a chat with their lawyer, especially when it comes to a franchise agreement. But franchise agreements, I think, are some of the tightest legal documents in Australia, considering so many people lost a lot of money in franchise deals in years gone by. So it's cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a franchise agreement up and running by Cocoon, and they have to prove their income. And whether you buy one of these packages or a different Cocoon package, we can see that income, and we can know that we're going to be getting that $250,000 or so a year. So it's quite comforting, and it gets rid of the too good to be true answer that people would constantly come up with when we're telling them about the income that's available. But there it is. It's all in black and white, and there'll be more to follow as well.
So the one I'm looking at, where does that fit in?
That's with a different NDIS provider, and that's high physical support housing. So it's where you're getting paid the rent. So yeah, so the rent is anywhere from 80,000 to 100 and a bit thousand a year, and you get per person, yeah, per room, exactly. So this is for the robust ones, the people with the mental issues.
Okay, so why would you do this over the other?
Because buying a completed property very often has advantages. Number one is we don't have to fork money out of our pocket for a year as well while it's getting completed, and the income's going to come in a lot faster. Because the income can come in faster, it also helps everybody borrow again, so they can buy one to be built pretty much as soon as, depending on the bank, a completed property's done. Because as soon as the bank sees another $5,000, $3,500 a week going into your bank account, you can borrow more money, and then we can go get one built. So that means you can buy 2 properties in a year instead of just 1 property in 2 years. So that's one reason why we like completed properties. The second thing is that, that's really, I suppose, the main thing, because income's coming in straight away. It adds to your borrowing capacity. Money's not going out of your pocket while you're waiting around and worrying about, am I going to have a tenant? Am I not going to have a tenant? Is the builder going to go broke? All those sort of things as well. You obviously pay a bit more for it with the stamp duty that we get shafted on as well. But, really that's only a couple of months worth of rent anyway. So it's not really worth worrying about. And finance is a lot easier for something that's complete as well, because the bank can go out there, have a look at it, see that it all exists, doesn't have any risks. It sees the lease, it sees people waiting. So it's a very much more straightforward purchase. And in superannuation, it's 1,000 times easier as well. Because if we build something in super, we've actually got to pay a third party to finance it, and they add their margin and their fees to it, so it costs us a lot more as well.
But the one I'm looking at is different because it's advanced.
Because it's advanced, it's already started, and the finance is already organised. Yeah, and we're typically trying to buy something that'll finish as soon as possible as well. Alrighty, there. Let's have a look. Any other questions, guys?
I've got a newbie question.
Yeah.
So I understand the benefit as investors. Now you're saying that the government is making lots of money from it.
Yep.
We are as well as investors. Where's the money coming from?
It's coming from those taxpayers that don't invest.
Right.
So if there was a person that's whinging about it or not doing well out of it, it's the Australian taxpayer, basically. So we would tell them to invest, and if they could. But yeah, apart from that, everybody else is having a wonderful time with NDIS.
Can I get a word in, Joe?
Yeah.
Hello, how are you? My name is John. You asked the question, who's paying for it, and how is the government making money? Well, the government's the one who's paying for it, but they're making a hell of a lot of money in a different way. By building an NDIS home, they're saving about $5,000 to $7,000 a week on keeping a participant in care, like in a hotel room or in places where it's temporary until a house is built. Now, it's going to cost them $5,000 to $7,000 approximately a week to keep them out of a house. Once that house is built, the money that they save is the money that the government makes. Now, the government gives money to each participant each year, and that is to supply services, housing, carers, everything basically, and especially if he's allocated a home. So the money that they save by having an NDIS house provided to them by investors like yourself is how they make money. And then the federal government, as you would know, has got an allocation towards NDIS, and which is growing by the year because of the state of affairs with the mental health of society as it is. And sorry for interjecting, and that's the status of affairs as they are at the moment. And there is advantages, as Joe said, and they're not going to be around for long at the caliber and capacity that they're being offered at the moment, because the NDIS is growing, and whoever can take advantage and make the most of it as they are today, and as people have in the past 3-4 years, it's the positive way to move forward. You had a question in regards to the rental that Joe said. That is a great scheme, and as is the other one. The benefit, sorry for interjecting again, Joe, is that with the rental scheme, you've got the income coming in straight away. And that's something that I would be looking at. And that's something I would also be looking at is the other one with the franchise. So sorry for interjecting, but I just wanted to get my 25 cents in, Joe. That's all.
Right. You got your 25 cents in, and that gave me a chance to go and have a look at the spreadsheet
Yep.
that we mentioned before, which is follow the money. So can you see that spreadsheet up there, John? Shared?
I can see it.
Okay, good. All right. So this is the answer to the newbie question, and it's a good question. All righty. Because once you can see how much money the government's making, all the rest of it makes sense. At the end of last year, Bill Shorten said that, it was the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, said that the NDIS generates $2.20 for every $1 that the government is spending on it. And so the money that gets generated is from things like what's in this spreadsheet here. So there's always stamp duty on the land, and even the lowest cost blocks of land these days, there's at least 10, easily $15,000 worth of stamp duty. If it's a completed house, it's a whole lot more. The building cost is pretty much the same, always somewhere between $600,000 to $700,000, very roughly. Might be a bit more depending on locations and transport, etc. So there's GST in the materials used in the build. Then to build a house, apparently it's like one full-time job by the time the finance guy's done his job, the plumber, the plasterer, the council workers, etc., everybody involved. So that's a job for 1 year. And I see that the average wage in Australia is $95,000, so the tax on that's about $25,000 that the government also makes. Then before we said that there's at least 10 jobs created for every house. Even if there was only 8 for whatever reason, the PAYG tax that generates is a couple of $100,000 as well. Then you're an investor, and no matter what you do, these properties are going to be cash flow positive. So you're going to be paying a little bit more tax one way or another. Maybe you're only paying $30,000, maybe you're only paying $10,000. But if you just bought it in your own name and got $200,000 a year, you'd be losing nearly half of that. I shouldn't say half of it because there'll be a loan as well, but you'll be losing 49 cents in the dollar of whatever we can reduce the taxable income down to. So in a lot of cases in your own name, you're paying $50,000, $60,000 in tax as well. Of course, you've got an NDIS provider that's providing the services. Very often they're making about 40% or more profit on all the services that they make, which also helps us understand why they're very happy to give us a lease. Because if they give us a lease for your property, it's got 2 people in it, and they're getting paid minimum $750,000, $1 million. Somebody that's completely disabled in a wheelchair might be getting $2.5 million as their plan, which is what John said before. The plan is the money that the government pays to the participants to pay for their services and be looked after. So if an NDIS provider was unfortunate enough to have 2 people quadriplegics in a house, then that's a $5 million a year business at a 40% profit. And how much rent they pay us or the fees they take out of the rent, they really don't care too much. There's an enormous amount of money. But the good thing about being in NDIS and NDIS investments is that the NDIS providers have come at NDIS from being caring, sharing, helpful people. They have not come at it from my point of view as being a greedy investor trying to make as much money as possible in the shortest possible period of time as safely as possible, which is how most investors would come at and see NDIS. They've come at it from the caring, sharing, improving people's quality of life point of view. And so I've had plenty of arguments as to, why NDIS providers should be deleting the KFC app off people's phones and we should be feeding them lettuces, but they don't really care. They want people to be happy and enjoy their life as well. So if we add up just the tax that gets generated, at least conservatively in the first year, every time we buy a house, there's well over $400,000 or more. And it can be a whole lot more. And then you also think what John said about how much money the government is actually saving. Yeah, so it was Bill Shorten that said it costs between $14,000 to $20,000 a week to keep somebody in hospital. So if that person with the disability is not in hospital, we're saving nearly $750,000 at least to the taxpayer as well. And so the government has made or saved over $1 million a year, and all they've done is pay you somewhere from $150,000 to $250,000 a year. So from the government's point of view, it's a wonderful idea. So it's creating employment. It's improving people's quality of life, not that they very often care too much about that either. And generating a whole lot more taxes, stimulating the economy, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty much win-win all the way around. Before, when I said taxpayer might be the only loser, when I look at the taxpayer saving $1 million, maybe they're not losing either. Maybe they're also winning out of this in investment. So it would be very difficult to be finding anything with a better karma associated with it. So did that answer that question?
Definitely. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, because we got the question a lot, it's the first question that people should be asking. That's why I just, quickly did the calculations on how much money does the government make out of it. And it was all shown in the budget last year, or a budget update in December too. Before I go through the general presentation, any other questions that are burning or distracting people? I'll ask you another one that John and Kathy asked me before, which was about how much money is needed to get into NDIS investing. Typically, entry-level property would be a high physical support house, maybe around Adelaide area, and these days that's close enough to $800,000. The land there would be around $200,000, and the build would be about $600,000. So when we add up what's required, we need a 10% deposit on the land. We need a 5% deposit on the build. There is finance costs associated with valuations and paying for inspections as the house is getting built, and the fees to the lenders, which can be $10,000 to $15,000, somewhere in there. So we do notice that there are higher fees with NDIS, because sometimes we can get a free valuation from the Commonwealth Bank. Maybe we pay $300, $500 for a normal everyday property. But if we go and buy an NDIS house, we're getting charged $3,000 to $5,000 for a valuation. And that's because it's looked at as a commercial loan, where they're going and taking into account the income as well. So we do get shafted from that point of view, but obviously it's worth it. What else do we need? So to get started, that's about $50,000, $65,000 in deposits, which usually we'd refinance from some other property, because even if we've got cash sitting in our bank accounts, we don't want to use it. We want to borrow money to make sure that it's a tax deductible expense. And then the bank's actually going to want to see that you've got enough money to get the place through to completion before the tenant starts paying you money. So we buy the block of land, we're sitting on that, nothing's happening for 4 months, 5 months. Once the concrete slab's gone down, the builder's going to want some money, so you're going to have to pay, the bank's going to have to pay him, and you're going to have to pay interest from the bank. So we would need probably another $60,000 or $70,000 to get through the year, and then wait for the rent to come in as well. Because with all the NDIS houses, there's usually a 3-month wait before somebody can move in and money starts hitting your bank account as well. So if we added that waiting time and you're still paying the mortgage, you know, we might be up to about $120,000, $130,000 that we need to get access to, that the bank wants to see to get the entry-level thing through to completion. In superannuation, it's a bit more, because we've got to pay some stamp duty. Oh yeah, I forgot stamp duty. On the land, yeah, there's $10,000, $12,000 worth of stamp duty. So maybe we need 140 in our own name. In super, we'd need closer to $200,000 to get something through to completion. Alrighty, so we've got to work out where that's coming from. And if the super fund owns it all, if the super fund owns half of it, do you join with somebody else? Because these days, I believe we can have 6 people in a super fund as well. So we've found a lot of family members put money together in super, buy something, and off they go, full steam ahead, which has been really good too. Can you see happy smiling lady with glasses and a
Yes.
maroon
Yeah, I
jacket?
can see that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, thanks for that. So the presentation I'll run through is to stop me waffling on, stick to the main points, and answer the questions that will occur, you know, in 99% of people over time. So Judy's already had this discussion where we basically make people use our mortgage brokers. But once it's a completed property, it's 100 times easier than getting something built. There's really only one, and soon there might be 2 financiers that will allow us to build an NDIS house in a super fund, and even outside a super fund, get construction for it. So your local everyday, even the big 4 banks do not NDIS funding. So, you know, you just can't walk down the street and get a loan for it. Because there's an enormous amount of income, we would always say go and have a chat with the accountant. Vast majority of people will put these into some sort of a family trust or super fund, as opposed to just buying it in their own name. But there's pros and cons to either way as well. We need to speak to a lawyer. We don't speak to just a normal conveyancer who ticks a few boxes. Because it's a commercial lease associated with it, we need to, you know, have somebody that's on your side, as opposed to just somebody that ticks the boxes and doesn't really care whether it all happens or not. Alrighty. And then, depending on your age, have a chat with a financial planner as well. And anybody over 50 should be having a chat with a financial planner and getting something like this into their super fund. Yeah. So this presentation, I put it together nearly 5 years ago now. Haven't updated any of the figures in there because I just wanted to prove to people that I was correct and still run for Pope. But you know, obviously things have updated every year. The good thing about NDIS is it's linked to inflation. And I think the increase in rent last year for our investors was 6 or 7%. So that was fantastic. Everybody else was whinging about high inflation, but none of our investors. So that was good. It came into law in 2016 when the Labor Party got into office, and that sort of worried us for a while as well, because we thought when the Liberals would get in that they would just chop it all, but instead of doing that, they actually increased the amount of money that was being spent as well. So I'll run a little video. Let's have a look. Should start up. And Gary, can you tell me if you can see it and hear it in a second?
Okay.
I think we're in the slow motion mode at the moment.
Black at the moment?
Did you hear any of that?
No, not yet.
Gary?
No, I can't see or hear anything at the moment.
All right, let me try again.
There's a page just come up. What is the NDIS and SDA?
Yeah. Yep. Let me go back there. And we've just zipped off to YouTube. So let's try again.
And be able to show
Can we see that now?
specialist disability accommodation
Okay.
Sharon.
is as a participant who really wants to progress the ideas of specialist disability accommodation and how important it is to support a person's life with high-level complex needs and how that can actually make such a difference. And I really want to explore this more to actually then be able to showcase to other people what might work and how they can live and do things.
We wanted to run this just so we get an idea of why it costs twice as much to build an NDIS house than a normal everyday house. We will have a look through the house in a second. You see a giant bathroom, like a hospital grade bathroom, but the walls have all had to be reinforced. The ceilings had to be reinforced as well so that it can cope with the hoists and joists to get people into the bath, out of the bath, into bed, out of bed, on the toilet, etc. sometimes as well. And then, of course, if we have those robust participants to make the house indestructible.
That they never thought they could do.
We've basically started to talk to the market to be able to say, here is this new segment and it's disability housing. We need to be able to look at it differently to the way we construct today. It's not a rocket science, it is just good design. Once we sit down with the person, the occupational therapist, the care team, I get an understanding of what the house and home needs to look like. Part of the projects that I've also run is things as understanding what home for life means. So
home for life is also very important for us because once upon a time, NDIS participants would get kicked out of the house once they hit 65 because they would then be looked after in the aged care system. But nowadays, they don't get kicked out because some bright spark sued the government after they worked out that kicking people out of a house at 65 is discrimination based on age. so they don't do that anymore, which is really good for us. And that's why we can now get leases up to 40 years as well.
As people age, the need changes. So you try and make the design for future-proofing. I also find by going and meeting the client and their families in their own home, it gives me an understanding of what is actually needed for the person that we're building this.
Yeah, so all the different NDIS providers have different requirements in their houses. So even though there's a standard that the government has worked out for what an NDIS house should be and what it needs to be to qualify, all the houses that we are building have a lot more than the basics included in the house as well, because that's what that particular NDIS provider wants. And remember that, you know, some of them have got 600, 2,000 staff, and so each house needs to be the same, and it needs to be obviously identical across all their houses, so all their staff can just go and work in whichever house they need to work in for that particular day.
Specialist disability accommodation is really important to me as central to the NDIS because it allows a person to have that chance to have a home, a space, be part of the community and celebrate what they really need to make that life come alive.
All right, let's just flip back to here. Sorry guys, we'll just start that up again. So you would have noticed the wider passageways, no steps anywhere through the house, no step all the way down to the footpath out the giant front door either. The no, whatever it is, steps or lip in the bathroom as well. Hang on, let's just get back to presentation. All right, so we should be back, and then we'll flip down to the next page. So we're back on, can you see back on the presentation?
Yep.
Yeah, all right, good. So when you're considering an NDIS investment, you really are worried, is somebody going to be in your house? And remember 4 years ago, or I suppose you can't remember, but, you know, for me, I remember 4 years ago, we were worried that if we built these houses, would we ever find people for them? So we would basically we would look at what areas were having the highest capital growth around Australia. We'd drive to those areas. We'd knock on the doors of NDIS providers and say, if you give us a lease, then we can probably get some houses built for you. And if they never got a participant, then we weren't really too scared because we were in an area of highest capital growth in the country anyway. And that was sort of a worst case scenario for us. But that was not a sensible concern because once we started building houses and NDIS providers knew that they could get these things organised, the carers would let people know that houses could be built, and there were more and more people coming into an area. Because it's also like 22, the participants who need a house don't go and get the funding approved because there's no house for them to move into anyway. So even if we look on the government website, it'll tell us what the demand is for NDIS in a particular area. That is very often very, very underrepresentative of what's actually in the area or what's needed for that particular area. So we go to the NDIS provider. We don't rely upon the government. And we ask the NDIS provider and we make them put their money where their mouth is as well. The government worked out that there would be about 28,000 people that would need accommodation when they first started looking at this way back before 2016. But then we flipped forward to COVID, and there was 122,000 people that actually needed accommodation before COVID, 2020. And then, of course, when COVID came along, it was one of the best things that happened to NDIS, because you had a whole lot of people that were sitting in nursing homes that were under 65, so they should not have been there. And you had a whole lot of people sitting in hospital that should have been in a house or somewhere more suitable, costing the taxpayers money. So when COVID came along and the government said we're going to be overrun, the hospitals are going to be overrun with sick people, and so many people were dropping dead in nursing homes, that all those people, two groups of people, got moved out of those places. And because there was no travel, there were a whole lot of hotels available, and these people went into the hotels system. So, and then of course the government increased the amount of money that they were spending on NDIS enormously. When we first started doing this maybe 4 years ago, I think it was about 23 billion that they were spending, which was about the same as Medicare. But now more money is getting spent on NDIS than Medicare, which is an astronomical amount of money. I think we're at about 35 billion this year. And, you know, maybe we don't know anybody that's in the NDIS scheme, but every single one of us has used Medicare. So the amount of money that's getting spent is huge, and it's not going down at all. Many reasons why the list or the waiting list for people is not going down. A lot of kids with autism, that's more and more of that happening all the time, and that's one of the biggest areas of increasing demand. Cars are a whole lot safer than what they used to be when I was, you know, driving around in real steel and bumping into power poles. You've got crumple zones and 25 airbags and all that sort of stuff, so it's a little bit difficult to kill yourself in a car these days, but certainly you can injure yourself, etc. Drugs, alcohol, those sort of things. COVID also stuck a rocket into the people with depression too, and that's one of the biggest areas, and that's catered for by the robust category as well. Because it was a Labor Party promise, we all thought the Liberals were going to turn it off when they came into government, but they increased it, and so then we got even more confident with it, and then we worked out how much money the government was making, so it's all full steam ahead with NDIS these days. Makes the government money, saves the government money, as we've seen. That was during COVID, when the government basically decided to print money and then get it into the economy. So it's a little bit irrelevant these days. The next question that people have is, what's the best area to be investing? I sort of touched on that, and it's the area where there's the most amount of participants waiting at the moment. So it's going to change regularly as to what the best areas are. Most of us have been investing in property for a while, and we all used to try and work out what the area that was going to have the greatest capital appreciation over the next couple of years was. I spent, you know, 5,000 on just, you know, one weekend's course with I Love Real Estate, you know, to help work out where that areas would be. I would have spent more than $40,000 on courses over the years, and Terry Ryder reports to point out, follow the infrastructure and everything else to work out where we're going to get the fastest capital growth, but all that's irrelevant with NDIS. We're manufacturing our capital growth up front based on the income. We're then refinancing that, and then we're buying another one, and we're getting our capital growth again. So we're getting our capital growth up front in the first couple of years. We don't need to wait around for it for many years. The good thing, though, is that the rent is indexed to inflation. So even if we get, you know, 3% a year, the house is still going to double in value, whatever that might be, you know, 15 years down the track, and we've got more capital growth to draw upon as well. The government has NDIS website, of course, and we can actually look on that, and we can see what the demand is in any particular area. We used to do that all the time before we could recommend an area. We would look at how much money the government was spending, and then how much it was going to spend a year or two down the track. So you click on a little slider and it'll tell you what the future spend is going to be. Because if it's an old established, in a suburban area, the money would typically go down on NDIS, and we wanted the money to be increasingly spent on NDIS. So money used to go down on NDIS as people moved into aged care. Already mentioned that doesn't happen, but in an old established area, the cost of land is going to be significantly more than outer suburban areas or regional areas, and the rent might be about the same. So that's why you see a lot of our houses are in regional areas or in the outer suburbs. And it's really just to do with the cost of land. There's an enormous amount of demand in the outer suburbs because that's where the young families are with the children with autism. In a lot of cases, one of the highest levels of demand. That lady, Sharon, in the video talked about Home for Life. And that's another reason why us as investors, we need to hurry up and invest as fast as we can, because once these people are in a house, they typically do not move. They wouldn't move house. Like I said before, there's a minimum specification. Anything else that participant needs above the minimum specifications, the NDIS is installed in that house for them. It might be extra technology. It might be facial recognition for them to open a door. It can be many, many sorts of things. Electric blinds that you saw in the video that go up and down because they can't use their limbs or can't press a button, etc. And so, they've got a brand new house. It's built specifically for them. They're not moving out anytime soon at all. There's 4 different categories, and we've talked a fair bit about the robust ones because that's where the profit share deal comes from, and that's where the migration deal comes from. And they're the people that, might have bad behaviour. They also might just have depression. So if you had 2 people with depression sitting in a house, the only thing they're going to hurt, might be themselves if they fall off the couch. So not really an issue. But if they've got really bad behaviour and they need 3 bodyguards for their carer, that explains why the house costs so much to build, because it's an indestructible house. The glass windows are indestructible. The TV's behind a perspex screen. The knives are locked away in the carer's room, etc., etc. So the other category of house that we build is high physical support, and these days we actually build a combination of both in most cases. So it can be either one or the other. Usually you're not going to put a crazy person in a house with another person, depending on what their level of behaviour is. But in a lot of cases, there'll be 2 robust people in a house, so they won't be crazy. They might be just depressed or something like that, or just not being able to completely look after themselves with occasional outbursts. High physical support's where they need a 24-hour care. And so all the houses that we've got have got a carer's room in them. And if we build a house to that standard, then somebody that is fully accessible category that can look after themselves can also live in that house. And somebody that's only slightly has a slight disability can also live in that house as well. So the rent we get for a high physical support person might be $80,000 or $90,000 a year. The rent that we get for a fully accessible person might be $70,000 or $80,000, and an improved livability might be around that $70,000 or $80,000 mark as well, per room per year. So most of our investors are not too stressed whether they get high physical support or improved livability. There's money coming in and somebody's got somewhere really nice to live, and there's not really a huge difference. And when we started this and did this presentation 4 years ago, the income that an improved livability person got was $20-something thousand a year. Now it's over 70. High physical support person was 45, and now it's about 80. So that's a lot more than what most of our investors that bought houses and now having their houses completed, or that have participants in the houses were ever expecting as well. Okay. Then of course, we've had a bit of a look at what a house looks like. So, the downside to NDIS is it costs a lot more money. The house price is twice as much usually than a normal everyday investment property. Government knows that, but that's also why they're bribing us with at least 5 times the rent, so that we will build these houses even though they cost a bit more. It used to take a lot longer to build them when we first started out, so you actually needed a lot more money available to get it through to completion. These days, that's not the case at all, because we're building a standard house in the vast majority of cases. So it's the same thing over and over again for the major NDIS providers, and the build time is under 5 months. To start building, we need to get people's finance organised, so that usually takes a month or so, maybe 2 months. Then we need to, list every nut and bolt that's going to be used in the house. The builder does that. That'll take him maybe 2 months to get all that organised for that particular block of land. And then it has to be approved by the NDIS provider as well. And once the NDIS provider is happy with what's going into that house, and that standard plan, which is easy, then it might take a month at the council to get the approval before they can start building as well. So there might be 3 or 4 months before anything really happens on site, and then there's 5 months to build. Once the house is complete, we used to be terrified about not having anybody to move into it, but all these houses that we talk about have got participants waiting to move in. It can take a month for them to come out of hospital, get all their paperwork approved from the hospital, because the hospital has to be satisfied that they're moving into an appropriate dwelling as well. And so somebody from the hospital very often comes out, checks the property. The SDA certifier has to come along and check the property as well to make sure that it got built according to standards, and they'll check that actually as it's being built, but we're not allowed to put anybody in it until it's been signed off as well. That can take a month for those couple of things to happen. Then they'll usually put 1 participant in the house, even if there's 3 waiting. Usually the NDIS providers not worried about us, they're worried about the participants, so they'll put 1 in, get them settled, and then later on they'll put another one, after maybe a month, maybe 3 months after that first person's settled. And then, because it's the rent is based on occupancy, at the end of that second month, when there's been a person in the house, the NDIS provider will send off an invoice to the NDIS. They might take a month to pay. So we've already burnt 3 months before money starts going into your bank account, at least. And the mortgage broker will make sure that there's enough money as a buffer there for you to be paying the repayments until that income starts coming in. The rent, this calculator, the updated calculator, was sent out with the invitation, so you can have a poke around with that yourself. These days, like I said, it's high physical support or robust, and that's just the rent. We're always building breakout rooms in robust. We're always building on-site overnight assistance, and that just tells you how much the rent is in different areas. So you can have a look at different areas and see where the best areas are to invest. But that's only one form of income. You also get at least 2 other forms of income, and that's 25% or of the person's disability pension. So they have to contribute as well, and because they're a low income earner, being on a pension, the government also gives the owner Commonwealth government rental assistance too. So that's another form of income. These days, This would have been done 4 years ago, and we were expecting an extra nearly $10,000 on top of the rent. These days, that's about $12,000 that we get on top of the pure rent as well. We're happy to do cash flow analysis, so you know exactly the pros and cons of putting it in your own name, putting it in a family trust, putting it in a company structure as well. And or some people are just excited to know how much money they're going to have to spend every month. So we can do that. This is an example from, 4 years ago now. So somebody's bought a $600,000 house, and a little bit scared about spending all that money 4 years ago on something that was unknown. And we were expecting an income of, we'll be down here somewhere. How much? Where's the rent? Oh, $85,000 a year. All right. So that was a pretty good return on a $600,000 property. That property in Caboolture is now, buy one off the plan, so not even completed, costs about $1.2 million. So they've doubled their money in 4 years, and the rent that they're getting on that house is about nearly $200,000 from 85. So NDIS is all full steam ahead.
Late, sorry. Late, sorry.
Sorry, I missed that. Was that a question?
Oh, no, sorry. It's fine.
That's cool. All right. We deal with maybe 20 different NDIS providers. We deal with about 60 different builders. Not all of them will do NDIS though. And so there's different rental agreements with different NDIS providers. Some of them give a guarantee like we saw right at the start. Some of them don't. And some of them we would never deal with. So you really only get to see, from our email blasts, what the best options on the market are at the moment. If you're getting a rental guarantee, then you're actually going to get less money than just getting the rent itself. So, you just got to consider how nervous, how scared you might be as if you want to go for a rental guarantee or not. The only times that people have actually gone for it is really somebody that's been retired and just didn't want to worry about anything anymore until the day they drop dead, which would be longer than their 20-year lease that they had on their property. So they were just in 1 day's worth of paperwork, they sorted their retirement out happily for them. Alrighty. So everybody's financial circumstances are different. The NDIS properties don't last very long at all. Typically, when we get stock, it will usually go to somebody that's been waiting, got their finances organised, has been nice to me as well, and and they disappear really quickly. So all these questions that we have, you don't wait till a property comes up. You have a chat with your accountant, you have a chat with our finance people first, and just get yourself into a position to be able to invest. And then when something that you like, or something that you're happy with, or something that's in your budget comes along, we would let you know, and you get first pick at it as well. Because if we do a blast out to the whole database, it'll typically sell, within a couple of days. Because we're, like I said at the start, we're really picky about what we can recommend, because we want you to be buying 10 of these things, and have a couple of $1 million worth of income a year. Ferraris aren't cheap, as opposed to just try and make some money on day one and then never hear from you again. Which is also one reason why we don't charge you any money either for these services. There are marketing companies that will charge you money up front. They'll charge you money to go and deal with the builders. but we all get paid by the builders anyway for bringing the builders customers. So we don't really need to keep charging you money and nothing up front, because we just expect that you'll come and buy again next year, and you'll invite all your friends, because playing golf all by yourself every year, because you can retire or you can have holidays anytime you like, it's going to get a bit boring unless a few of your friends are well off as well. In this presentation, I can email it out to any of you as well, and you can watch it again at your leisure. There's links to the information as well, so it just tells you that you don't need to believe anything that I say. Everything that we talk to you about is documented from the NDIS point of view and from the NDIS providers and the SDA providers. You'll get copies of leases when you're purchasing as well. Alrighty. I see a few messages coming in. Are there any questions that anybody'd like to ask, guys?
I'll have a talk to you a bit later tomorrow about a couple of things, if that's okay.
Anytime. And that's another thing too. We're making hay while the sun shines. So you can ring me on the weekend. You can ring me after work if I'm awake and not tied up. Then I'll answer 7 days a week to get all this happening while we can. Alrighty.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
thanks. That was really good.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Any-
Bye.